Hello there. Good day. Good afternoon. It is the 4th of May, 2025. It is currently around 3:15 here in my current location. And this time I was thinking about how much um, music cost. More specifically, the crazy amount of money that it requires to one, be a musician, and two, to provide concerts. There is quite a lot of factors, but I'll try to scale it down into something that's much more manageable. So let's get started on that. Um, in terms of money, what is required to be a musician? It's a little ridiculous. Here's the thing. So most people's instruments, at least from what I know, are at least 10,000, whether it's euros, dollars, um, equivalent, or like whatever currency that you use, right? Um, there are a lot of instruments that you, at first glance, might be able to try, right? Um, However, then you look at the price of them and then realize that, yes, the instrument costs like half of the median salary or something like that. If you really want like a good quality instrument that's relatively, and I say relatively in huge air quotes here, affordable, um, then that's just the instrument itself. That's not even talking about the bow or whatever else you might use. Like for brass players, they have to get like keep maintenance on their valves and whatnot and their mouthpieces. Um, it really does add up once you start doing the math and writing it all out. Like for instance, I'll give you a quick little primer of mine. So was my instrument was relatively affordable. I also um, had it gifted because someone else had paid for it, which was really nice. Seriously, thank you so much. But that whole thing with new strings, especially, I just bought a pair of new strings and they cost me around $150. Yeah, that the 150 US dollars, not Canadian dollars. Um, and that's just for that one set, and there are other sets that are range from 60 to like $200. Ava Paratis are the big scam. I don't like them. Um, that's just my personal opinion. I know people who use Avas. I'm not a fan of them, but alas. And then I had to get a new. Okay, so I'm not even sure how to describe this. It's not a shoulder rest. It's a play on air, which I personally like it. I got the one that is much wider instead of just the circular one. Um, that cost me around like another $40. And then I had gotten my bows rehaired, so that was around like 170 or something like that, if I remember correctly. And so already we're pretty much close to like 400, $500, right? And that's just for strings, my play on air, and then like rehairing two, three bows, right? Now imagine if I had to like get some work done on my instrument, like I needed to close a seam or something like that. Um, that also adds to the cost, and then imagine if I had to get a new case. And cases are also really expensive because they the cheapest ones, like this quote unquote student ones, they're usually just black and they don't have much padding. Um, those are like $50, but then the good ones can cost you like 100, 150, 200. Um, I got lucky. I still have my case that I bought in 2018. It has lasted me quite a long time, thank goodness. Um, but I know people who bought like a BAM case, and then something has gone wrong with it, and then they've had to replace it, and so it's just like, oh, that's like $250 just gone, right? So already, if we're keeping up with our math here, um, that's already close to 1,000. Maybe not close to $1,000, but like $750 just for the case, new strings, a shoulder rest, and then like rehairing your bows. Now times that by like two. So let's say you have to rehair your bows like, I don't know, like maybe like twice a year or something like that. You have to buy new strings like twice a year. Um, those costs add up very very quickly. And then on top of all of that, you have to make sure that your instrument is polished and cleaned and whatnot. Um, thankfully, like polish and cleaner are very like cheap, so you can pretty much buy them in, maybe not bulk, but like you can get like two three bottles of polish and cleaner at a time, which is really helpful. So that way you're not having to like search and keep for cleaning your instrument and whatnot. So that helps out. But yeah, so that's just like maintenance on the case, bows, and cleaner. In terms of costs to host concerts, oh my goodness. And if anyone who does that sort of thing, I'm sure you already know and can probably give me relatively some relative numbers here, but it is kind of insane just how costly it is to host a concert. Just like even just indoors, um, there is one example, I think, if I remember correctly, where it wasn't a concert, but it was a wedding. But with everything that they had, because we were mic'd, we didn't bring any of our own stuff. Um, with all like the PA system and whatnot, it cost them like $5,000 to just to have us play like the ceremony, which was it just blew my mind. Um, and now add anywhere from 4 to like 60 people, and then you have to have rehearsals on top of the concert and whatnot. And yeah, it adds up. Being an orchestra is expensive, especially since you're a nonprofit primarily. So you have to, what is it? So like the burden of performing low key not only falls on the audience members who are attending, but it also kind of falls on the musicians. With the way I see it. Um, but I'm thinking purely from like a business side of things. I'm not talking like artistic or anything like that. And then let's say you have like a guest artist, right, which is fairly common. Um, you have to pay them. You have to like transport them and whatnot. Yada yada yada, and like all of the costs just start to balloon if you're not careful. So it's a huge pain. It's a lot of headaches, a lot of numbers. It's a lot of spreadsheets, which is why I don't do that because I don't like looking at spreadsheets because they hurt my eyes. Um, but yeah, so that's that. And then on the other thing that I wanted to talk about when it comes to money and how expensive it is to be a musician, um, travel. Yeah, especially here in the states, or it's probably like the worst example. Canada too, probably. Um, you can't exactly, yeah, you can't exactly like make a drive to like I don't know, like even Texas. Like I wouldn't drive to Texas if I could avoid it, right? The closest city uh, for me is Houston, right? Not counting New Orleans or Baton Rouge. Houston's a 4 hour drive away, right? And it would just make sense, much more sense to fly to Houston rather than just drive, because we don't have rail lines that actually exist or work properly here, but that's a different topic. Um, but yeah, so especially if you're touring the US, you have to fly to all these places, and plane tickets are expensive, and it is just a huge hassle because you're spending maybe at the least like I don't know $400 on a plane ticket, and then that costs. Let's say you go to like 5 cities, so yeah, spend $400 times those five if you're getting cheap tickets, right? Then you have to add in the hotel stays, which are also expensive. Those can cost you anywhere from like $75 to like 200, maybe not $200. $200 is a little extreme, I think, depending on where you are. Um, but let's just say like $150, like on average, right? So it's just kind of insane just how expensive it is to be a musician. And unless you're like at the top echelons, um, here in the states at least, like if you're not in New York, San Francisco, like Chicago, Cleveland, it's not really worth it being a full time musician unless you have something else to supplement it, which is why a lot of people teach at universities as well. Um, a lot of the orchestras here are per service, and a lot of them simply don't have the big backing that like the big orchestras do, and so they can't compete with you know even what's a good example, like okay, so even like it's hard for a regional orchestra to compete with like say Charlotte Symphony, right? um and the Charlotte Symphony offers, I believe their salary is a 50, it's roughly 50K for the year. It might be more. I'd have to look again from that audition if they have auditions. Um, but yeah, you can't exactly compete with a job that offers you 50 to 60K if you're a regional orchestra unless you happen to have people that just really like that orchestra and have the money to like splash to sponsor you and whatnot. So a lot of people will wind up playing in multiple regional orchestras and then scrape by either by teaching or doing something else with like outside of music, which is what I have done, and am still doing currently. Um, Less to a lesser extent because I am not currently teaching at the moment. But that is partially why I started composing, is because maybe if people like my music, they'll want to buy it. I don't see myself at the moment getting any like big commissions or whatnot. Like I don't see myself, being the next John Williams. I kind of just write what I write when I want to, and I'm perfectly fine with that because it gives me a whole bunch of freedom to mess around with things. But yeah, in terms of being a musician, life is expensive, and I don't think that is going to change anytime soon, um, unless like something major happens. But we shall see. Um, in the meantime, I I want to encourage if I want to encourage people to write out their costs and whatnot. And I actually like to break down my payments. This is off topic here. I like to break down my per service things by the hour rates. Um, so let's say if I have a 2.5 hour rehearsal, um, and so I'll divide that service, like the per service rate, by by the hour, and I think that really helps me with where I spend my time. Um, not that I can be too picky right now, um, but it really has brought to light just where my time is going for how much of it, and that is simply a symptom of living in a capitalist society. But I'm not touching that. I'm not touching that phrase again with a 10-foot pole right now. But yeah, so being a musician is expensive, and the reason why it's expensive is because of travel and having to keep up maintenance on everything. It's like having a car, essentially, but at least with your instruments, you can always keep it repaired at its like what's the word term I'm looking for? Like you can always like keep your instruments to like a minimum like functioning level, unlike cars, because cars just kind of break down eventually. Like if your engine goes out, like you can't just replace the engine without it costing you like however many thousands of dollars, right? Um, but that is all I have for today. I wish you well wherever you are in the world, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.